Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino. Welcome to another episode of No Brainer. I'm here, as always, with Mr. Jeffrey Livingston, I presume.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. It's still cold. It's nasty. It is, February 13th? Ooh, it's almost Valentine's Day.
Just 6 more weeks of winter, right?
At least, right?
Yeah. Did you get your present? Are you good? Is Amanda going to find you?
Well, because we're going on vacation in a day, I've got some general dispensation, I would say. So I'm not likely to get in trouble. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going
You're
to have to
getting
pull
in
a rabbit out of my hat. Yeah. I figure I'll cook a good meal tomorrow in good shape.
All right. That counts.
Right?
That's good husbandly duty for sure.
Fortunately, I'll be going to the grocery store tonight, so we'll take care of that. So.
Excellent. All right. So to help Jeff in his trips to the grocery store, of course, we want to make sure that he's recognized everywhere he goes. If you are a loyal listener, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Please be sure to review, give us those thumbs up. I'm not sure grammatically how that goes. Is it thumb up, thumbs up, thumbs ups? But regardless, you know what to do. Spread the love, show the love, and thank you, as always, for supporting the show. We have another great episode today. Jeff, do you want to introduce our guest? And we'll get the show rolling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, we have entered a strange time period, which I think most people can understand, where we're seeing a lot of activity around Washington, D.C. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but with that in mind, advocacy on both sides is taking the news stories over. And there are often organizations, shocking, nonprofits, there's trade associations, businesses, they all have their own lobbying and advocacy efforts. And with that, we bring you AI from the forefront of advocacy with Tom Spencer, the CEO and founder of AdvocacyAI. Welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. I do feel a little bit attacked when you criticize the weather, because this is just solid British weather. This is what we feel at home, and an attack on it is an attack on me. So we'll have to review that. But no, it's a real pleasure to be here, guys. Yeah,
I actually heard some remarks from a senator from Vermont yesterday saying, "What's wrong with you all? This is just Vermont weather."
It's summer in Vermont.
This is great. Yeah, it could be nicer, but reminds me at home. So
very cool. So Tom, maybe just for people that are on, give us the real quick elevator pitch on what AdvocacyAI is and what you're really trying to achieve with this particular market segment.
Yeah, sure. So AdvocacyAI is a technology platform that, at its core, allows organizations to get people to advocate for different positions to lawmakers or decision makers, or get involved in their organizations. Where we're different and where the AI comes in is we pull in as much data about people as possible so that we understand who they are, how they think, how they act, what they're willing to do, to make the communication that the organizations have as relevant and effective to those people as possible. What that's attempting to achieve is that organizations aren't overburdening advocates by just asking everybody to do everything, so they can be very specific about their asks. It's making the communication that gets to lawmakers relevant to the lawmaker, because they're being lobbied in a way which is effective for them, and they're not being spammed by 50,000 of the same email, which is not a tactic. I think it's a tactic that's been overused and was overused a number of years ago, but is for some reason still used.
Yes.
So we're not trying to get fewer emails and calls in, but we're trying to get more relevant pulls in.
That's an important distinction,
Which
right?
is an important distinction. So that's fundamentally what the platform does. And I'm sure we can get into the how it does it and the why it does it that way and how AI is used in that process.
Yeah.
Later on, but that's what we're there for.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like obviously data is going to be an important part of our conversation today, because I'm sure that's the,
I mean, we're called Advocacy AI, but we might as well be called Advocacy Data. Without the data, there ain't much AI going on. The data informs it all. So the data is the crux by which everything is pivoted around.
I could see like no-brainer podcast listeners across the ether just groaning. Oh, it only took them 3 minutes to get to the data.
What else is there to talk about?
I mean, that is AI. And it's unfortunate that people still would rather talk about the bells and whistles. You and I had a funny little chat about a rant that I posted yesterday on that topic. But the reality is, if you've unleashed this stuff without really kind of fine tuning it with contextual data, whether that's actual structured data or unstructured data with prompting it with a bunch of content, et cetera, you're just going to have problems. It's just not going to be on point, and you're going to have all the errors that people are talking about. But before we get into that, I was at an event with you last night, and you had about like 50, 60 Washington technocrats in there, or advocacy organizations. This topic of data kept coming up, and they kept talking about needing to clean up their data or providing clean data. So why is data really becoming very, very important in the advocacy side right now?
I think people have realized, and I'm going to actually bring back in AI into that. So I think people have realized that in order to run an effective advocacy program, you just need to understand who you're talking to. Because that's an obvious statement, but it is shocking how little some organizations understand about who's actually taking action. And there's a realization that with more data, you can get more precise. If you're more precise, your messages can resonate more. Where AI comes into it is they're like, oh, can AI help describe that data? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what it's there for. Once you've then got that context, you can then use AI to produce good messages and produce good follow-ups and produce good journeys for people and produce good communications and everything that comes with an advocacy program. And I think the big shift for me in advocacy organizations, and I'm pleased that it's happening, it's taken 2 years too long, is people have gone, oh, can we use generative AI to write press releases? And I'm like, that was it 2 years ago. And they're like, well, will this put us out of work? We write press releases. Why would we do that when it makes stuff up? That conversation is going away. And now it's, we have all this data. How do we process it? And can you describe it? And it's like 100%. Yeah, that's what we're there for. It's a nice shift to see. And it was the main topic of conversation last night.
Yeah, which is interesting because, and Geoff has been ranting about this a lot over the course of the past week. In other sectors, it seems not every sector and not every company, but in some sectors, it seems the conversation is still stuck in that can it write our press release conversation.
Yeah.
How do we get it to do the dirty work of writing stuff for us and stripping all the humanity out of that? And a lot of people are kind of bristling at the data conversation, I think, in part because they know that they're maybe 20 years, not even 2 years, 20 years behind the 8 ball on getting their data house in order in some cases. So I'm curious, from a sort of broad perspective, as this conversation is moving along and the mindset is shifting in advocacy, what are you seeing advocacy organizations actually do?
They are attempting to just be more relevant to their members and simultaneously be, I'm not going to say more relevant, less annoying to lawmakers. If that, again, it's not that.
I think it's okay to annoy lawmakers, by the way. I think that's perfect.
This year in particular.
I go out to find unique ways to annoy lawmakers, but there's ways to annoy them and there's ways to not annoy them. And
affect change, right?
Exactly.
You want to affect change.
Yes. And annoy them in a way that is beneficial to you, not in a way that is detrimental to your cause. I think so. There's the realization that they have to be more relevant to their members, and they have to take action, which fundamentally is bringing about that change. And the data is the way to do that. And I think they know that now.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think in a lot of ways, when I think of advocacy, And bear in mind, a lot of our audience is going to be coming from the for-profit side of the world. They're marketers, they're business leaders, whatever. Advocacy may not be the first thing they're thinking about, but I think it's an important topic. But when I think of advocacy, to me, it's at its face value, fundamentally human, right? And of course, there are many fundamentally human things that we can make better, more effective, more productive, et cetera, by having the data to back up the decisions we make, the actions we take, and all of that. How does an advocacy organization or an advocate strike that balance between the fundamentally human stuff of connection and the stuff that can be automated and driven by data?
I love that question. I think it's people are often very surprised when I say I built and run an organization called Advocacy AI, and the point of that is to make advocacy more human. And they're like, well, how? Why is AI in the term? And it's like, well, let's say humans are great at doing human things. They're great at human-to-human communication, and advocacy fundamentally is about human-to-human communication. But let's say but people are different fundamentally. And if you have an enormous amount of data about people and your AI can process that and then describe what motivates that person to you, when you then go and have that human-to-human communication, you're speaking to them in a way that is going to resonate with them. So the AI can look at someone's profile and go, this is Dave. Dave is likely to be motivated by ideas around personal freedom or ideas around national pride. And so just knowing that, you can go and talk to Dave in a way that you're not going to, at the very least, not turn Dave off. But ideally talk to Dave in a way that...
Let me talk to him. I'll turn him off.
I was going to say, but also you can do... But my fictional Dave is possibly a good character because you could also figure out who's the best person to go and talk to Dave.
Right.
And
which tone or even which avatar, if you're even that far along. Yeah.
And it could go, actually, don't send Tom. Tom's just going to annoy Dave. Send literally anybody else might be the answer. But just knowing that improves that human-to-human communication. And that's useful.
Go back to that party. I don't want to reveal names or anything, but there was a polling type of organization there that said that they didn't use AI at all, right? That they felt that it's the conversation evolved. It turns out they are using some machine learning, but we already know those algorithms. We trust them. They haven't used anything new that's come out in the past couple of years, which means basically they've lopped off the entire generative movement. And I guess I kind of got this Luddite feel from it, and I want to kind of poo-poo the thinking. I get it. I mean, I feel the same way about some of the writing. I often draft my own stuff and then use AI to kind of strengthen it rather than to go the other way around. But I still use it, right? I still understand its role within my process. And I do see a healthy, let's just say minority at least, of people say, don't use this stuff. It's bad. It's going to affect the way that you're able to message your donors, your members, your grassroots organization, et cetera. So with that in mind, like what's your thought about this recommendation about not using AI in an association or a nonprofit? Like, how is that impractical? Is that detrimental, or am I just being like the cheerleader saying go AI the whole way?
I mean, you're the best cheerleader for starters on that. But I think I know
the hair.
And the pom-pom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think I know which unnamed organization you're talking about.
That's for you and that.
There were some ways you just shouldn't use AI. And I think there's been 2 years of people all over, but particularly in the kind of the nonprofit trade association world, who say this is going to take our jobs, or why would you get AI to write this when a human should do it? And it's like, yeah, a human should do it. And you shouldn't have been using it for that in the first place. It can do generative content stuff if you give it the data to do it. And only if you give it the data to do it. And even then, you may not want certain pieces of writing done because they're so crucial. Like if you're requiring incredibly niche communications to an incredibly niche audience, just write it yourself. If you could generate the prompt to spit out something good, you have the knowledge to write it. And then you can maybe use AI to, like you say, strengthen it, do a little gut check. I do the same. Whenever AI responds with, you've got a solid start here. I'm like, you're just telling me it's good. I've asked you to give me feedback, and you're going to give me feedback. But if you're saying it's basically fine, I'm okay, and I can carry on. But it's not there just as a content mill, and it shouldn't be there as a content mill. Certainly, without the data to provide that content in the first place, it achieves nothing.
What would you say to take this organization's unnamed organization scenario to an extreme? You're
Gallup.
talking.
Gallup.
You're so we're not going to be like the Gallup poll fan favorite of the year podcast or anything like that. We
Yes. Here comes the defamation suit. Gallup, it's not you. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Don't Kendrick me.
We're
don't
going
do
to
that.
Gallop away from that comment.
No
as fast as we
defamation
can.
suits. None of that.
But you're talking about sort of making an informed or at least intelligent decision about the right use cases, the wrong use cases. But do you believe, is it a viable position for a nonprofit, let's say, to say we are not going to do AI, period?
Short answer is no, it's not viable. Second answer is my brain breaks at the concept of the question. It's like saying we're not going to use electricity.
Exactly. So let's talk about that, because there is some of that out there, right? There are people digging their heels in and saying, no, not us, not now.
Never.
Some of them saying never. So how do you respond to somebody like that? How do you get them over that hump to join?
Well,
I don't want to say revolution, but
yeah.
I mean,
and again, I wouldn't say revolution either. Again, it's
especially not to a Brit. I wouldn't go to a Brit. I know it's still sensitive.
If we're going to attack the culture of Britain through our weather and our military defeats, then
how about your breakfast, man? What's up with the breakfast?
I'm on board with that. British food and the British full English breakfast is awful and should be banned.
Hey, have a what sausage?
Yeah. Sausage in an intestine, go for it.
That said, actually, haggis. We're moving north of the border into Scotland, but haggis, which is a sheep's stomach filled with various, is one of the most delicious foods of all time. And if it can be combined,
I've heard.
actually good.
I'm from Pennsylvania, so I got nothing to say about this. Given that we produced Scrapple.
I think Scrapple is, but I can only imagine that it's just. That's nonsense. Anyway,
it's close to haggis.
Oh well, I might try it then.
Yeah, scrap is the operative syllable in Scrapple, so you might get a sense of what it is. At that point.
Everything left over the pig.
Yeah, basically.
After the sausage. Bear that in mind. It's after the sausage. You can only imagine what's left.
Yeah, that's where the real taste lies.
Somehow I'm sorry, I completely derailed this whole thing.
No, I derailed it by being offended by cultural attack. You might have to remind me of the exact question. I know.
So the question was, how might you make the argument to someone who's opted out of the AI era?
So this might not shock you, but I attempt this and do this quite a bit, and I think it starts with just shutting down and moving away, positioning yourself as far away from the wrong AI people as possible. And as soon as they realize that you agree with them, that some ways people advocate the use of AI is junk, then you can start explaining how AI should be used. I was at a conference, I was on a panel at the weekend, and it was a group of people who are more inclined to not like AI than other organizations. And so I was a bit wary. And obviously I turn up looking like I do with the name AI in the organization name, and assumptions get made.
They're like, oh, it's Sam Altman's cousin.
Basically, yeah, Sam Altman's British cousin has turned up to take all our jobs. And I said, so I was saying what I say about AI. And at one point someone asked about images in politics. And I went, I want to be very clear, and I want to make sure everyone understands that if somebody suggests using AI generated images and videos for political communication, they should immediately be escorted from the building and not allowed within 100 feet of a campaign decision. And there were people in the audience who audibly gasped that I was there criticizing the use of AI. And I was like, yeah, politics and advocacy is fundamentally a human endeavor. Don't fake it with an image. Yeah. Take a picture of a human being. And then they were much more open to me talking about how to use AI, how to process that data, how it can be useful in political communication. I had a conversation with somebody at last night's event because the concept of bias came up. And bias is a real thing to talk about. And I said, if you give it the right data, you can make that bias significantly less. I have bias. You can criticize AI and again, if you ask it to do something in it without any context, it will be biased because it's going to the most common thing, which means you're excluding the minorities by definition. And if I was to sit down and write something myself, I would have bias, except I wouldn't be able to detect it because it's my bias. So I don't even know it's there. But if you can provide AI with the data to describe who it is you're talking to, and the AI understands the data of the context of who that person is, what you're going to get out is going to be a much less bias output than me writing it. And that means I can then talk to someone who I am fundamentally biased about without knowing it. And they were like, that's a really good point. And I was like, now let's talk AI properly. And so I think that's how you persuade people is you just, you do things like that.
And that also speaks to the partnership between, I don't even like to use that term. If I don't like revolution, I don't like partnership any better, but between humans and technology, that understanding where the technology might present the possibility of improving upon a human capability, but also being the human in the loop to recognize you're not just throwing whatever AI came up with out there and sticking in front of lawmakers or constituents or whatever. You're looking at it and you have an eye towards, is this biased in a different way that I might not have been? Or is it reflecting my bias? Or is it reflecting bias on a data set? And how do I now be attuned to that and course correct for it to make sure the output is better than what we would have done as humans or what machines alone are doing?
Yeah, no, I think one of the kind of most important parts of that are textual assumptions. And one of the ways in which our platform does that is by actually just measuring the outcome, which again is not a revolutionary, sorry to trigger you again, not a revolutionary thing to say, but if you're producing content, you can see if it's effective or not. And if you want better proof that AI can generate meaningful human-to-human communication, you can just look at how humans respond to it when it's structured correctly. It is not close.
Right.
I have been writing political communication for almost 2 decades, and there are some people I just can't write to. I don't know enough about them. Not only am I a white man, I'm British. I don't know what's Scrapple.
We're back to that, are we?
We're back to Scrapple.
He's got a fancy for it now. You can tell.
I don't have that. I don't have the cultural knowledge. Like someone recently talked about, I'm sure, a charming young man called Jimmy Buffett. And I stopped them. And I was like, I know the name. I just have absolutely no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
Just on that basis, AI can help me communicate with somebody.
Right.
You can't be an expert in talking to every person on the planet. It's not possible. And if AI can just give you the context to be able to help you get through stuff, it's like having someone come along to you before you have a conversation and go, do not under any circumstances mention Dave's wife. They're going through a really rough time at the minute. Just be careful. And you go, oh, thank God, because I was just about to ask how the wife and kids were. If you just have that little context in the back of your head, your communication is better, and that's what AI is there for.
So with data analysis, and as we move towards this, more of the data in application and advocacy, without getting into the actual politics of the election that just happened, it seems to me that the way the Republican Party used data, and they used AI to parse that data and message to niche segments, was far superior to what the Democrats did. And you could see that they were actually using AI, I think, particularly with TikTok and some of the other social networks. And I'm sure with the email communications, I wasn't privy to them, but, I'm sure that the way that their message was very niche. Like if you were a Latin male, you got this. If you were a Jewish male, you got this. If you were a white woman in the suburbs, you got that. And it got maybe even down to zip code level messaging, which we've seen with some consumer marketing and AI. But can you talk to us a little bit about how data, in your opinion, based on what you saw, was used during the election on both sides, and which side may have won that battle?
I'm not even sure there was a battle last year to be won. I think it was over before it began. And So the way I experience that data use is it's very outdated thoughts about what polling is, how to communicate with people, who you should try and speak to, without going into the details of how, and I'm sure people treat it differently, but you look at someone's likelihood to vote and you look at someone's likelihood to vote for you, and you draw and you get a knife and you cut it. But if you're over this, we'll speak to you. And if you're under that, we won't. And maybe if we have a bit more time or money, we might staple it together and cut it somewhere else, but you're cutting it. But all that means is these are not hard and fast rules about how you speak to somebody. Within the area you cut off, there are tens and tens of millions of people who are open to your message if you bother to try. And some parties, without getting political, some parties do that better than others, and some parties apparently don't even try.
Right.
And that, I think, is it upsets me that they don't try, but that is where data and AI can really come in handy. Because if in this area you've cut off, data analysis can go, there is this section here, but if you message in this way, you're likely to achieve a result. That obviously is helpful, except you're not doing it with one segment of the population, you're doing it with every segment of the population.
Right. So rather than dismissing whole segments, you're actually getting into a little more complex shades of gray, if you will, with the data analysis.
And I think, it's, I mean, we've been having this conversation for so long. It is baffling that people still haven't got the concept, let alone the application, to fix it. But it goes back, I remember back in like 2008, I think it was Obama was talking about we aren't red states or blue states. It's just silly. The way people were treating data and polling last year is as silly as looking at Texas and going, oh, it's a red state. Well, yeah, but there are not tens, but actually there probably are tens of millions of Democrats in Texas.
Big state.
It's a big state. There's a lot of people there. The Republicans certainly weren't looking at New York and California and going, that's a blue state.
No, they were, I mean, you saw Trump showing up in the states.
And people were like, why is on earth he doing that? He's not going to win New York. And it's like, hey.
Why win a couple of districts, right?
If you win a couple of districts, you win the House. And that's at the state level, and that's massive, but it applies everywhere. People look at rural and urban and go, well, urban, you're Democrat, and rural, you're Republican. There's still 30% of people in rural areas who are Democrat.
It brings up a great point. I'm from Philadelphia, so go Eagles. We won. We took them down. I'm sorry.
One of my cultural things, you are referring to the Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl. That's right.
Which happened recently.
Yes. And
you beat the Chiefs.
That's right. And if you're from Kansas City, you did get blown out. Anyway, not that Philly people talk smack, but
sure.
One of the interesting things that I saw about this, which speaks to your broad paintbrush of the way advocacy and Democrats and Republicans see the world, right? Philly is a blue town and Trump hates it, was something I saw. And I kept thinking to myself, I don't think that's true, because the year that he won in 2016, he carried South Philadelphia, right? And if he won Pennsylvania, he won Pennsylvania again this time. And it's because he did show up in Pennsylvania. It's because he did carry parts of Philadelphia. And like, if he were to just take that whole paintbrush and blow off that city, he's talking about blowing off maybe, I mean, I don't know what the population of Philadelphia is right now, but let's say it's 600,000. He's blowing off 100,000 people right there. That's a lot of people to blow off in a big state. You know?
No, absolutely. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, not to talk about my party again, but was saying how
it was such a good party.
It was very much fun. I loved it. I mean, I definitely wanted all those people to come and stay as long as they did and spend all my money. I mean, it's
I did think that the hors d'oeuvres you had were pretty awesome.
They actually genuinely were delicious.
I think we're hungry today, Greg.
And distracted.
Mostly talking about food. But they were talking about how Utah is like the fastest growing state in the country. It's and it's not something I've heard, but it's almost the likeliest of the red states to switch blue because of the demographic shifts and the cultural shifts that are going on.
Utah's awesome, man.
I've never been, but it looks pretty. And they gave a really compelling point, but I don't think there were people sitting within a 10-mile radius of me who are in a position to, or even interested in, competently speaking to an emerging population of people in Utah.
Right.
To bring it back to the data and AI, Data can identify those trends, and AI can help you understand how to solve them. And then you can send some people to go and fix it.
Right.
And that is, in a nutshell, how AI should be used.
To inform decision, to inform strategy.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to content, where you're using generative or not, inform that.
To contrast that to how other people talk about AI is the equivalent of saying, oh, we're going to generate 100,000 messages without any context and send it to every person in America.
Right.
Obviously, that's stupid. Obviously, that isn't going to work. And that's what people who say AI is there for kind of just mass content generation essentially say. They're saying we're going to generate messages and send them to everybody.
We'll just A/B test every single one. The one
we'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the contrast, and that's where the conversation is very slowly heading.
Yeah, yeah. And, I think about, and this is a sort of a principle that rears its head again and again and again. It reared its head in the social media days. It reared its head through all of the decade or so of digital transformation talk. It's happening now, is the difference between sort of the easy out, which is automate or at best improve doing the things we've always done, right? We've always mass blasted the world with our dear person email messages, right? And now we think there might be a cheaper, faster, easier way to do that because ChatGPT can write my drivel, versus finding the ways to use these technologies to do different and better things, right? So instead of mass blasting cheaper, faster than we've ever done before, it's find new audiences, uncover hidden opportunities, be more personalized in ways that we just could not do if we didn't have the data at our hands and the AI to make sense of and act upon that data.
I think that's exactly right. When AI first came out, and we've discussed the people who still hold this view, it was, oh, how does this help us do what we've done before?
Yeah.
And the assumption is, therefore, you're just using it to just spam people. And it's like, no, take a deep breath. How would you use this if you had these tools? And that's where I think people are settling, is the kind of, oh, wait, we don't have to just spam everybody all the time with complete junk and hope that some of it sticks. And again, it's not revolutionary. It's done in the commercial world all the time and has been for some time, even before generative AI.
Sure.
Generative AI isn't it isn't fundamentally changing how data is useful at all. Data has always been useful. And so some of the issues that we're faced now with what data can do was an issue before generative AI turned up. Where generative AI is really helpful is that it can put human words around the data that you do or don't have. And I think the challenge that my organization is attempting to fix, but I think the challenge within the nonprofit and trade association world is they hadn't even caught up with the data thing yet. I think you said earlier, 2 or 20 years behind in terms of that data. And it's been a bit of a rude awakening to them to be hit with wait, we should be using data at the same time that generative AI is coming in. And it's been a lot for people to kind of wrestle with, which is how you end up with organizations saying, we're doing none of it.
Do you think that's, and we run into this attitude, so I'm kind of leading the witness a little bit with this, but we kind of feel like for most people, data is their attic, right? Like, that attic in your grandma's house that you never want to go up into because you think you're going to walk through like inches of dust and find stuff from like the antebellum era of the United States. You don't know what's in there, right? I mean, I think that's kind of how people treat their data and their stack. And
it absolutely is, although I'll go further than that and say there are some organizations, more than I would like, that when you do go into that attic, it's empty. And they don't even have any data. And you're like, we were scared. There's nothing here, guys. We thought there'd be little dolls in the corner and little kind of, love letters. When
some of Grandpa's old love letters to Grandma, right?
We can't.
Secret affair. Oh no!
You open up the chest and it's just empty. Right?
Empty. And I think. So yes, it is grandma's attic. Sometimes grandma's attic is not as scary, is empty, and I think the idea of, but that also then makes generative AI scary because people like us turn up and we're like, oh well, generative AI can just describe your data, and they're like, we don't we have emails. We have a bunch of emails.
ChatGPT, tell me about my data.
I mean,
You have this empty test. There's nothing in there.
Exactly. Just a constant reply being, please provide me with more information. Would you like me to generate you some data?
Yeah, that it will do.
Yes, it will. And I think that's...
Did I tell you I was trained on Twitter and Reddit? Let me show you.
You can make AI generate some absolutely... Actually, I was recently at the Public Affairs Council, and there was a prompt writing section, but there was human feedback in it to generate what we're doing a prompt for. And as it was like Mad Libs. And there was one session, and the Mad Libs was absolutely fantastic. The made up organization and the made up thing we were lobbying for was just like, this is gibberish. Like I was genuinely concerned that it was going to break the AI and produce nonsense. And yet, because we gave it some context and we gave it some data and we gave it some guardrails, what it produced was the best version of the nonsense it was attempting to persuade and advocate on I'd ever seen. And people in the room were like, that's actually really good. I couldn't have written this made up organization's advocacy effort as well as that. And it was like, oh yeah. And that's how it can be useful.
Pretty fun. Let's wrap on this one question, because I think this is kind of touching at the heart of the fear. And I'm sure there are people that are fearful of AI. We probably lost them at moment 3 when we started talking about data. But
lost them at subscribe.
I think you lost those guys a long time.
Yeah. We'll soundbite this one, but with folks that are concerned about losing jobs, stuff like that. And I mean, I think we're starting to see this really happen now, particularly with the tech layoffs and obviously what's happening with Doge and the government. And I don't want to get into the political side of that, but we are seeing AI and job replacement really become a central theme. What's your perspective on that? I mean, on the nonprofit side, is this a good idea? Do people need to be afraid? We even see some folks, we were kind of ranting about this. This was the genesis of the rant. Somebody was telling people they're going to lose their jobs if they don't get ChatGPT down, and then they sell their ChatGPT webinar. What's your take on job loss with AI? Where are we going with this? Is it a misunderstanding of its intended use to replace people?
Yeah. So yes, the very short answer is yes. It is a complete misunderstanding about what AI should be used for. It is not there to replace people at all. There may be circumstances where it could replace a person, but because fundamentally it is a language model, it is attempting to do human to human communication. Well,
not well.
Yeah. If what you're wanting it to do is human to human communication, for the love of God, please get a human to do that. People should be much, much more worried about machine learning.
Yes.
Replacing, but people aren't worried about that. Well, I'm sure some are, but that is what, if I was a data scientist or a developer or worked in the tech world, I'd be worried about my jobs, because machine learning and advancements in technology are impacting that sector a great deal more. But because advocacy, politics, non-profits and trade associations are fundamentally human to human activities, AI shouldn't, I can't think of a single job I would replace.
It should be assistive, right?
It is only there to make the human to human communication better, and could not replace a single job that is done by a human.
Following up on that. So I want to pick up the thread of the cuts just because it's relevant and it's on everybody's minds. One of the theories that I'm hearing in DC, just in my networking, and I actually heard it at your party too last night, but I'm hearing it in other circles, is that with all these cuts that are going to be made with Doge, theoretically, then what's going to end up happening, and I'm sure we're going to see this with tech companies too, so I think it's relevant for everybody. They're going so aggressive with the cuts that they're going to actually have to hire people back, because they're going to realize that they basically cut off their nose to spite their face, literally.
I think, again, without getting into the politics of it, I suspect that is the case. On the exact opposite side of the generative AI is there to churn out junk on mass scale. There's a group of people who are there basically saying AI can just do human jobs. And without naming him, his
Zuckerberg?
name... Go with him.
Rhymes with
like how I went?
Men.
Without naming anybody, there's a group of people who genuinely seem to believe that AI, machine learning can replace humans.
And they actually sell AI too.
And they actually make AI. They're the proper AI guys.
Right.
And they're wrong. And they're going to find out that they're wrong. And my use case is I am a self-taught developer. I was taught by AI. and a lot of hard work. And every now and again, when I'm tired, I just say to AI, please try and do this complex task that requires a niche understanding of who it is I'm trying to talk to and what it is I'm trying to do. And it does a great job of getting every single bit wrong. And I'm like, oh yeah, because actually it doesn't fundamentally understand what I'm trying to do, because it's just it's an algorithm. And so I then have to go, okay, I'm just going to write it myself. And the people who look at the work that humans do go, oh, I could automate this. And it's like, you could automate 98% of it, maybe. But the 2% that you can't automate is fundamental to what's actually being done and cannot do it. And you need those humans for that 2%, and you're going to hire them.
It's the extra 2% that comes with expertise in anything, right? If I know nothing about Jimmy Buffett, which I imagine I know a bit more than you do, although I'm not a Jimmy Buffett
I know
fan,
you stayed
but
at Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, we did stay. We didn't stay there though. We did speak there at Margaritaville in Hollywood, California. But
I wouldn't admit that too much.
But hey,
completely lost me.
Anyway,
be grateful for that.
Yeah, be grateful. We've gone from Scrapple to margaritas, but
must be the end of the pod.
But you know, if I mean, I don't know why I picked Jimmy Buffett as the example, but if I am not an expert in Jimmy Buffett and I ask any of these generative AI tools to describe Jimmy Buffett's career, I will accept virtually anything that it has to tell me without a critical eye whatsoever, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm an expert in something, I immediately identify all of the areas that are off base, right?
Yeah.
And right now there is no machine replacement for that kind of expertise. And that 2%, as you said, is super critical, because that 2% can be the difference in code, certainly, between works really well to mucks up the entire system.
I mean, I have firsthand experience of that 2% being the difference between a product that is really good, fun, cool, and useful to a crashed system.
Right.
Inexplicably, and for reasons I don't know, crashed other parts of the system too.
And it's just as true with stuff that's not technical.
Yeah.
It might be process expertise as it is in coding, but it could be content expertise,
but
being able to understand the true from the false.
So the reason I say that the coders and the technical people should be more worried about them losing their jobs is that I think it is 98% in code. Yeah. Whenever, and that's because it's nerds talking to a computer. Computers are really good at talking to themselves. But when in advocacy and nonprofits, you're fundamentally talking about human. The nuance isn't 2%. It's 98% that is expertise, human judgment, human decision-making, putting a face to a face. There's a reason that I don't get a chatbot to go and speak to every advocacy person on the planet. I have a party in DC with the most important people I can speak to.
And Geoff.
I invited Geoff. I knew we were doing this today.
Everybody needs a clown at their show.
Really corporate. And then mercifully, Geoff had this amazing rant on LinkedIn, which you haven't seen. You need to go and read. And Geoff just turned up and I was like, lovely rant, Geoff. I think super rant. Because in advocacy and politics, it's 98% human and 2% you can automate.
Yeah.
And so automate the 2%. No one ever has to do it again. And then spend 100% of your time doing the human to human stuff.
Very good. I think that's a great way to wrap. I don't know.
It sure sounds like it.
It's convenient that comes at the exact time that we were due to wrap. It's very.
It's funny how that stuff works.
Weird. Yeah.
Although we handled some pretty thorny topics today, I will say, and
this is a
you treaded that water really well, Tom. I really appreciate your thought today.
Well, again, thank you guys for having me. It's always fun.
I'm going to say it again because I didn't realize it was even a brilliant pun as I said it, but this was certainly a meaty episode. So, Tom, where can folks find you if they'd like to learn more about you and what you do?
You can find me on advocacyai.com and or LinkedIn and or at the moment in the middle of DC. All right. So
we will drop him in Advocacy AI. It's an easy enough URL to remember, I'm sure, for most people, excluding myself, but I will drop that link. I'll drop the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes for anybody who needs that. I can't help you with DC, just geocache form, I guess. But
it's now called the Gulf of DC.
I'm sorry, it's the Gulf of Maryland.
The Gulf, yes.
No, it's the Commonwealth, the Gulf of the Commonwealth. All right.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of good value out of this. I know I enjoyed the conversation immensely, despite the mentions of Scrapple and blood sausage.
I don't know
I
how we
guess
got to that.
I guess just a little sign
my
that we are
fault.
all more alike than our differences might tell us. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tom, for being with us. It's been a really good conversation. Again, if you are listening, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, provide reviews, click that 5-star button because you know this is 5-star content, not because of me and Geoff, but because of Tom. Again, share. Be sure to let your friends know what we do here. If you do have any questions or comments, go to nobrainerpodcast.com, click the contact button, drop those into an email, and we will be certain, at least reasonably certain, to pay attention to those. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great couple of weeks. Take care.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.